my father in Alaska, I was very small. I was 4 to 6 years old, and he would wake my sisters and I up in the morning. We did not like this at all, but he would whistle reveille and say very loudly, "It's another day in which to excel." And it just put us all in the worst moods. But my mom would then follow and say, "Just do your best." So we had that expectation that we were expected to excel. And one thing that many who've not been in the military or know people who grew up in the military or who serve, everyone serves in a military family, not just the service member. When you're moving every couple of years, you're going into a new environment, you very much are aware of your responsibility to behave in a certain way so that you do not bring shame or dishonor on your parent who is serving. You're aware that everyone is watching your behavior, and it will be reported back to your parents and when you're in a foreign country, you represent America. So if you do something, people are going to think that's what Americans are like. So you have a responsibility not to shame your family, to shame the Army, to shame America.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to IngenioUs, where in this current season, we are exploring the leadership journeys of transformative women in higher education. I'm your host, Melissa Morris-Olson. That voice you just heard belongs to Dr. Christina Clark, the 8th president of Roche University in Pennsylvania. And what you heard is more than just a childhood memory. It's the foundation of a leadership philosophy built on service, accountability, and standing up for what's right, even when it means you're standing alone. In today's conversation, Christina takes us from those early morning reveille calls in Alaska and the Philippines to her first presidency at a mission-driven Catholic university where authentic values alignment isn't just rhetoric, it's lived every day. We'll explore how her training as a classics scholar shapes the way she sees institutional challenges, why the interview process at La Roche left her energized rather than exhausted, and her uncompromising vision for preparing students for the fourth industrial revolution. If you've ever wondered what it takes to lead with authenticity in these unprecedented times for higher education, or how to discern the right leadership opportunity for you, this conversation is essential listening. Let's dive in. President Clark, it is such a pleasure to welcome you today to the IngenioUs community.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be invited to come.
Now, congratulations, first off, on your inauguration as the 8th president of La Roche University. You have spent, if I'm correct, you've spent more than 20 years at Catholic comprehensive institutions, universities. So when you first considered La Roche, what is it in your own story that made this presidency feel like the right next chapter for you?
Well, it was interesting because, obviously I was on the job market and looking at presidencies, and I'd never been to Pittsburgh before, so I wasn't sure. But in talking with the consultant and reading the leadership profile, I mean, for me, it's all about mission and core values and how authentically you live that as an institution, as a leadership team, as a community. So I was really drawn to La Roche's mission, its deep engagement with forming students to be global citizens, for not only delivering a strong liberal arts-based education, a values-based education, but one which was really focused on also developing students to be good citizens, to serve their communities, to work for justice and peace. And I was looking to see how they do that authentically. And I was really struck by their creation in the 1990s. A former president, Monsignor Kerr, created what was called, and I'm going to use classical Latin because I'm a classicist, the Pacem in Terris program, which brought students from war-torn and developing countries full ride scholarship to campus to give them a transformative education with the goal that they would go back to their countries and rebuild and use what they learned. And I thought, wow, that's a real big example of putting your money where your mouth is. And I have found La Roche to be a very authentic community in the way it lives its mission and its core values. So that was something that resonated with me, what I find important, my own values, and where I thought I could be happy in that way. But also the leadership agenda really fit my own experience. And I felt I could really serve well to meet La Roche's needs in this particular time.
That must have been a very affirming kind of awakening realization because this is your first presidency, right?
It is.
Yeah. And
It
so
is.
to be that intentional, but also to find an institution where the fit is so obviously good, both for you and for the institution. So
It was interesting at all steps of the interviewing process, the first semifinalist Zoom interview to the all day on campus experience. I enjoyed it so much. I enjoyed the conversations. I enjoyed each group that I met. I didn't feel tired. It was energizing to be in those contexts, and I just enjoyed every bit of it. That's not normally the experience that I have in the sort of grueling interviewing process.
yeah. So that's a good sign that that was the right pathway for you. So now you grew up in a military family. You spent some time in Alaska and in the Philippines. What leadership muscles did those formative years build in you, and how do they show up in how you lead today?
Well, that's a great question. I've been thinking a lot about that when you have to write your inauguration speech. You need to integrate you and your leadership journey into the institution story and what you're called to do there. So I've done a lot of thinking about this, and I really do think that the key to understanding who I am is understanding that I am an Army brat. That's the context in which I grew up. My parents both, they were both first generation college students in their families. In their own relationship, they had the same values coming out of their Catholic upbringings themselves. And we were raised, my sisters and I, to value education, service, and ethics. So you can see a lot of that comes out of sort of Catholic social teaching, but also the first generation realization of the real power of education to provide social mobility and opportunities. So my father in Alaska, I was very small. I was 4 to 6 years old, and he would wake my sisters and I up in the morning. We did not like this at all, but he would whistle reveille and say very loudly, "It's another day in which to excel." And it just put us all in the worst moods. But my mom would then follow and say, "Just do your best." So we had that expectation that we were expected to excel. And one thing that many who've not been in the military or know people who grew up in the military who serve, everyone serves in a military family, not just the service member. When you're moving every couple of years, you're going into a new environment, you very much are aware of your responsibility to behave in a certain way so that you do not bring shame or dishonor on your parent who is serving. You're aware that everyone is watching your behavior and it will be reported back to your parents. And when you're in a foreign country, you represent America. So if you do something, people are going to think that's what Americans are like. So you have a responsibility not to shame your family, to shame the Army, to shame America. So feeling that you're a member of a community, that you have responsibilities, even as a very young child, and that you're going to be held accountable. You learn manners. I was 4 years old and I was trained to answer the phone and to say, "Colonel Clark's quarters, Christina speaking, how may I help you, sir or ma'am?" You're taught to shake hands, to look people in the eye, to be respectful. And that's really valuable. I mean, I don't even really remember learning it. I just sort of always knew that was expected. And moving every few years, you learn the skills of coming into a new environment, assessing it, and integrating within it successfully. That's something I just took for granted that everyone knew how to do until we moved to Virginia and I went to regular public schools and not base schools. And then you see those children were not friendly. They didn't know how to deal with new people coming in. And so that was not a nice experience, but I also learned a lot from that. So growing up in that environment, adapting in that way, learning these skills that have stood me in great stead as an adult and as a leader, and also watching my parents. My father and mother modeled for us their expectations as parents will. My father, as provost marshal in Alaska, would, before I was in kindergarten, he used to bring me with him, for example, to review the troops during their winter maneuvers. And my mother did a ton of service as an Army wife. She didn't go back to work until we were in the Philippines, apart from being an Army wife, where you had to do a variety of things that were expected. So we just saw them doing that. We knew their expectation was that we would be effective in our roles. And also, we were just raised with the expectation that, getting back to the ethics part of my upbringing, that we were expected to stand up for what was right. Even my father would say, if you're the only one standing.
Boy, those sound like wonderful experiences and training for a college presidency, not to mention any other professional kinds of aspirations. So, what a wonderful legacy that you bring with you into this work. So now you also mentioned your training, your academic training as a classicist scholar, and you're the second president I have spoken to in the last year who was trained as a classics scholar. So I'm curious how you'll answer this question. So how does that intellectual foundation influence the way you approach leadership and how you lead? And so second part of the question is your journey, because you were a faculty member. And so how do you understand the journey from faculty to the presidency?
Yes. Well, I think just bringing in something, when I was doing the Executive Leadership Academy through the Council of Independent Colleges, when I was exploring moving from provost to a presidency, they had us do the Clifton Strengths. And that was very interesting. And I was not surprised, given that I'm a humanities scholar, I'm a classicist, that my top 5 strengths were learner, right? Intellection, input, context. So I am a researcher. I have great curiosity about the world. I love to research, dive deeply, analyze, discuss. And in terms of classics in particular, it taught me, because classics, for people who may not know what the field involves, you have to learn the ancient languages. So ancient Greek and Latin, and then a bunch of modern languages. So you can read and teach Greek and Latin, but then you're studying the whole ancient Mediterranean world and everything that is. It's literature, it's history, it's art, it's philosophy, it's medicine, it's religion. So I learned to read very closely. And I bring that habit of mind with me into my administrative work. So I'm a close reader of people. My specialty within classics was the study of the representation of nonverbal behavior in classical texts and art. So I am a close reader of people and of situations, of contexts, and I bring that whenever I go to a new place or I'm interviewing. I do a deep dive into the website, into reputation. I do web searches, I read up, and then on the individual people, the leaders, the students. And my first year, I did the usual listen and learn tours where I met with every single unit on campus and listened carefully to what they wanted to tell me about La Roche, and what was good about it, what needed to be improved. And I synthesized all of that information together with the results of an HR employee survey into the major themes that I heard, into, the great things about La Roche, the things that people were concerned about and wanted to improve, and just presented that to the community and asked them, said, I'm going to need your help next year, because this is the end of the academic year, to prioritize in our new strategic plan which things you all feel are most important for us to work on. So I think that close reading skills that I bring, in addition to systems thinking, because when you learn about the ancient Mediterranean world, you're learning about the systems within ancient Greece, Rome, Egypt, Mesopotamia, and how they interacted with one another. So I think those are things that I bring with me to my leadership that came out of my professional discipline.
Now, the journey from being a faculty member to administration to eventually the presidency, was that something on your radar? No. So how did that evolve?
I've always wanted, well, since I graduated from college, in essence, became an adult, it's been very important for me to, well, I worked in business for several years after I graduated from Georgetown. I had no idea what I wanted to do after graduation, and I don't even know if there was a career center at Georgetown at that time. No doubt there was, but I didn't know about it. And so I kind of flailed around and I worked in business, and I was very successful in that because of the great skills that I had developed in my largely humanities courses, communication, collaboration. And while I succeeded, my final job in the business world was a credit analyst, and, enjoyed it, but it's good to fund MRIs, it's good to fund trucks and specialized equipment, but it didn't feel like I was having a real positive impact on the world. And the times of our life are so short that you spend most of your time at work. And so I wanted to really have an impact on people, a positive impact. So my mother was a teacher, my cousin's a teacher, my sister's a teacher. So I went to graduate school because I decided I wanted to be a faculty member to teach classics, and I loved it. As a classicist, I also taught a lot of core classes, so world literature, basic beginning languages, all sorts of those types of classes. So not just classics major things. I served as a freshman advisor often. I loved it because you're really seeing the impact that you have on individual students. And I still have a folder with all the emails and cards and thank you notes that I've received from students. And when I have a bad day, I get those out and I reread them. I was asked to take my turn as chair of my department at Creighton. We just rotated it, like every 3 years, someone had to do their turn. So I did my turn as a new associate professor, and people really liked the way I led. After I would go to the chairs meetings with the deans, I would come back and I would send an update to all the faculty. This is what we discussed. This is what's going on. This is where I need your feedback. People didn't really do that. So they appreciated that transparency, that openness. And so I learned that I had skills as an administrator that I didn't know that I had. And so there's that. Then there was my shared governance experience. And, I was raised with an ethic of service. So when I came into my tenure track role, I ran for senator, ran for faculty counselor, and served on committees, important curriculum committees, and things like that. And I learned a lot about how universities work. And I saw a lot of what the Romans would call exempla, examples of really good and effective leaders, and really, be they administrative or faculty, and then really, really bad leaders and badly behaved faculty. And I got to see over a long period of time the effects of those different leadership styles on students, on the campus climate, on the institution. And I would have, as a senator, I would have a faculty member coming to me and saying, complaining about something, often with good reason. And then they would close by saying, someone should do something about that. And I did actually say to someone, well, why not you? Because there's lots to complain about. But if you're not going to be part of improving things, then you're just wasting everybody's time. And I was very frustrated by the corporatization of higher ed and the sort of disingenuous way some of the leaders were, well, less than honest about what they were doing and why. And I felt a real moral obligation because I felt that was sort of the wrong way to go. And I needed to be part of the solution and not just a faculty agitator. So I put my hat in the ring for a dean position. And before I did that, though, I had gone to a friend and colleague of mine who was serving as interim dean and said, I'm interested in leadership opportunities. And this is something that Creighton did well. It did provide professional development. It did provide a wide array of opportunities for you to try on different types of leadership. And she did support me in that way. She offered me a wide variety of opportunities. And one of them was the opportunity to, after I stepped down as chair of classics, to be the director of the Health Administration and Policy program, which was in disarray. And I didn't know anything about health administration and policy, but I'm really good at researching. And so I threw myself into it for a summer. And my job was to set it up so that we could hire a health administrator to take it over and run the program. And that was a great way for me to see that I have that ability. And I think that was something that I needed to experience before I could go on to serve as a dean elsewhere.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had an experience. Well, there's a number of things in what you're saying. One, you said yes to
Yeah.
opportunities, and then you leaned into these opportunities, and it sounds like maybe one opportunity after the other led you down the pathway eventually to the presidency. Did you have a mentor or a sponsor, or were there individuals who had an influence on your leadership as you went down the pathway?
Well, I wouldn't say that I've ever had a mentor or a sponsor, but I have had people who, well, I had a mentor in graduate school. Barbara Fowler was a classicist at University of Wisconsin who had come in. She was one of the first women in the department, and hearing about her experiences where it was very sexist environment, really terrible things. And so seeing her journey into becoming a full professor there and a named endowed chair and that kind of thing, even as she had a family and was doing that work. So she was really a mentor on the academic side and being a faculty member, which was a first step. Then the friend and colleague at Creighton, Bridget Keegan, who's still Dean of Arts and Sciences there, she's the one who we were both chairs at the same time. Then she went up to the deanship before I did. And she's the one that I asked if there are any leadership opportunities, let me know. So if I hadn't asked, I'm not sure they would have come my way. So that was an important step for me to asking for that. And then I had wonderful examples of Christine Wiseman was vice president of academic affairs, and she worked very closely with Tim Austin, who was dean in arts and sciences at that time at Creighton. They were phenomenal exempla of really great leadership, very collaborative, collegial, forces for good, had the respect of faculty. And then when I was at Marymount as a dean, the president, when I first arrived, was Matt Schenk, and he was a wonderful exemplum. He showed respect for people. He would always address the deans as honored dean, and he would just come to your office. He would just show up, and everyone was, oh my gosh, the president is here. He showed respect for shared governance, for people. He was a good model of a president and leading in the way that I like to lead. So I had good examples. I had people who did serve as references for me. but I've never had an official mentor or a sponsor as I hear about other people's journeys.
Sure. You have the experience. You've completed most of the coursework in a doctoral program, but you have not completed that dissertation. Now you have a path to leave your ABD, that's all but dissertation status, behind with Bay Path University. Our innovative Doctor of Education and Educational Leadership ABD degree completion program makes it easier than ever for qualified candidates to finish what you started. Our one-of-a-kind program builds on your previous experience with coursework designed to strengthen your innovative leadership mindset and gain the skill set you need to lead and to transform educational institutions for the 21st century. The coursework for the ABD degree completion program is entirely online and can be completed in well under 2 years. What's more, you will have an abundance of support along the way, from your dedicated faculty advisor to your small dissertation seminar group of classmates with whom you will meet regularly for dissertation advisement and much needed encouragement. With Bay Path University, there's no reason to wait any longer. Trade up from ABD to EDD and take your place among the next generation of educational leaders. For more information, visit our website at baypath.edu/EDD. Don't wait a minute longer. Make today the day you finish what you started. If I were on your campus and I was following you around or I was hiding in the corner, what would I see in terms of how your leadership actually plays out?
Interesting. I try to get out. We spend a lot of time at the computer screen, heavy lift on email, but I try to get out around the university. I try to attend events, especially it makes my day if I can attend an event with students, be it a sports event or last week, some students invited me to come to their Halloween spooktacular, which started at 9, and it's like, oh, so that it's great because the students at an event, the kickoff picnic for this academic year, there were a bunch of students sitting together and they said, "Oh, Dr. Clark, we really appreciate that you come to our events and you care. We see you." You know how they say things like that. "We appreciate you. We see you." And I say to them, you're why we're here. And it makes my day when I can come and spend time with you. It's important to me that I know people, that I know their names, that I talk to them, for example, after the board meeting recently, there were some cabinet members who were staying after and chatting, and my executive assistant, who's also a secretary to the board, she was starting to pick up because a lot of people had just left their trash at their seat. And so I went over and started helping her. And that got the attention of the male cabinet members who came over and started helping too. So we're all in this together. And that's the feeling I want everyone in the community to have. When we have a campus cleanup day, I'm out there in jeans, weeding the gardens and helping. I think you shouldn't ask people to do anything that you yourself won't do.
Yeah, no, and those are the things people will remember. So thank you for sharing that. As you think about how your leadership has evolved and changed over the years to the kind of leader you are today, how would you describe that change? And what leadership skills do you lean into most heavily now in this role?
I think that one thing that stands me in very good stead for the times in which we live is the fact that I am someone who does not shy away from conflict. In fact, most of the really horrible situations that I've seen that are just, human situations at various universities, there's always conflict. There's always interpersonal conflicts. And for example, at Marymount, I would learn that there's been like a particular faculty member who had been behaving in a certain way for decades that was highly inappropriate, and no one had done anything about it. And so I'm like, oh, well, that's not good for students. So we're going to do something about it now. And it's not like I like conflict. I I try not to create it myself, but I will put a stop to it because if it's hurting students, if it's hurting the mission, if it's against our core values, we can't do it. And so I will engage with it and I will resolve it. And I think I have seen so many people so afraid of conflict that they let terrible things just continue on. So I'm willing to engage conflict and I'm willing to engage difficult things. I'm not afraid of failing because you don't succeed without failure. And I'm not afraid of people not liking me. Of course, I would love to be liked, but you can't be a faculty member and without like 25 years of teaching evaluations behind you, you develop a tough skin.
Yeah.
And in fact, I really appreciate getting feedback. When I was dean at Marymount, I got an annual review by the faculty and staff. And I appreciated people who are willing to say, these are good things that you're doing. Here's some stuff that we think could be improved, and here's some suggestions. I got a lot out of that, and I would come back at the school meeting and I would say, someone suggested this. And so I'm thinking we could do this in response. What do you think? So they could see I take their feedback very seriously. And I'm not afraid of people disagreeing with me as long as they do it in a respectful way. I'm an academic. I expect people to apply critical thinking and analysis to things and suggest ways to either make things better or maybe kill an idea that's not actually very good. So I think that those things, the fact that over the course of my life, I have learned to be brave, are needed now.
Yeah, that's probably a bit of an understatement.
Yeah.
Based on what so many of the presidents I interview, how they describe the challenges that are facing them and other in higher education today. I'm interviewing only women leaders in this current season, women presidents. And so I do want to ask you a little bit about your experience through the lens of gender. Are there places that you can look to or point to where gender influenced your pathway or had an impact or bearing on the way in which you had to do your job? And I'm thinking either as a catalyst, something that was positive, or a barrier, or both.
Well, it's interesting. When I think back to, I was very shy initially when I went to college at Georgetown. And I went to Georgetown, I started in 1981, and they had only started admitting women in, I don't know, 69 or 70. And I majored in classics, and there was a lot of men in that, more than, female students, male students, and female students. So I definitely, as a student, experienced some feeling out of place, perhaps. And then in graduate school, which was in the early 90s, I had a seminar professor for a history class. And the gentlemen in the class, my male fellow students who were male, they would monopolize the conversation in class, the discussion. And if you wanted to get a word in edgewise, you would have to interrupt them. And if you are a male student and you interrupt a male student, that seemed to be fine. But if you were a female student interrupting a male student, then you were rude. And women are socialized not to interrupt people, to wait until they finish speaking, and it's more reciprocal conversation. So I went to see the professor and I said, are you aware that you're fostering an environment that favors men over women, and that affects people's grades? If you're not willing to interrupt and be seen as rude, you're not going to get an A. And he was like, no, that's not true. What are you talking about? And he got kind of angry. So learning and growing and working in shared governance, having to learn when to speak up and when your voice is going to be heard, and how to speak up without being a rude, abrasive, aggressive woman. And then as one of my administrative roles outside of Creighton, I won't say which one, I had a supervisor who would be verbally abusive to the women administrators below him in a way he would not with the males. So he would yell at me for what he thought my facial expression was.
Mhm.
Didn't like it. He didn't like in a small meeting of, fellow administrators with him, our supervisor, for me to bring up potential problems with an idea he had or bring up the faculty viewpoint. And he got away with it. I mean, he was well known. He had anger management problems with women. So I ended up leaving that position. I went on the job market, I got another job and I moved. But learning to navigate those types of things that are, as a woman leader, how are you going to present yourself? I'm a very direct communicator. I think it comes from my military
Mhm.
army background. And I've had to learn that some people don't appreciate direct communication. And I've learned a lot over my leadership journey to adapt my own style to different circumstances, to different people, to be more aware of how they're perceiving me. Because even as a faculty member, I didn't want to be a mom, the
Yeah.
faculty who's a mom. I wanted to model professional. I wanted to be warm and engaging, but in a professional way with standards. And that was tough to learn to do. Even when I became a mom, I didn't want to be a mom in my job.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge.
Yeah, and I have heard other women and women leaders, women presidents, talk about this pull, this tension that they feel, some even feeling that members of their community, as their president, but members of their community have this mom sort of image of them. And so when they do something that is maybe tough-minded or that, yeah, that can cause real tension because moms aren't supposed to act that way, even though none of this is spoken or articulated.
No, not
Yeah,
at all. And
yeah,
that's where sort of nonverbals come
yeah,
in. I'm the type of person who will name things.
yeah.
I'll say when I said this, you looked that way, or your tone of voice was this way. Can you explain a little bit about how you were thinking? It can be really tricky. And I think at this time in my life, I am much more confident. And I think it's because I feel the fit is so good with this community
Mm,
in terms of values and mission, because I think the skill sets I bring really meet this moment. And because I have built trusting relationships with, I think, my leadership team, with faculty and staff, so that they can tell me, honestly, how they, if they think, obviously my leadership team more, I'll say, please let me know if you think this is not the right path. What do you all think? And we do talk things through and we will adjust. And in various times, but sometimes I'll just say, no, I really think this is the right thing to do. And I take full responsibility
mm.
for that.
You
So
were, oh, go ahead.
and we just can't afford not to be bold now.
I think courage must be part of your DNA as a leader.
I have a great sort of inborn sense. I know this because my parents have told me stories from when I was 3 and things that I said, an inborn sense of fairness.
Ah,
And if I think something is unfair, I feel compelled to address it. Although, I didn't get an A in that class, got an AB.
yeah, yeah,
So you got to be willing to pay a price for speaking up.
yeah. So now, what advice would you offer to emerging women leaders who are looking at you and they're wondering, gosh, is that something I could do? Or maybe if I do want to pursue a presidency, what's it going to take? So what advice do you have?
Well, I think seek out leadership opportunities. You got to ask. At least I had to ask. I didn't have people offering me on their own, leadership opportunities. And really look and ask yourself what's motivating you to do it. Because I think the way the times are now, the money alone is not worth it. And then really seek out something like, if you can, if your university has such things, the professional development funds, to go to things like the Senior Leadership Academy at the Council of Independent Colleges. Or my first one was going to the CIC's Dean's Workshop. And from then on, I just sought professional development opportunities. If need be, I paid for them myself. And then really did sort of an inventory of what are my skills and where do I lack them? Where do I need to develop them? And where do you want to go with your leadership? Like right now, I have friends who are public university presidents. That's not for me. I don't want to be directly controlled by the board of trustees who may be appointed by their governors who are very politically. So I would much prefer to be in an independent institution. And I prefer, the Catholic environment for that values-based and mission-based experience. So really knowing where you would want to lead and what environment, where you could flourish, what your talents are, what would make it a good experience for you, because it's going to be hard. It's really hard because the times are really hard. You have to be able to take criticism. You have to be willing to be disliked. You have to be willing to take risks. It depends on where they are in their career. The pressures on you are different at different stages of your life. Is your partner behind you? Does your partner have an interest in being a partner to someone who's in that role? There's a lot involved. So a lot of discernment, as we say in Catholic higher ed, and what would make it worth it to you to go into this? Because, I know as president, I can be fired at any time for any reason. And I'm at a point in my life where that's okay, but where I still responsible for educating my daughter and having that income, I would, you're constrained more.
Yeah. That's great wisdom and great advice. So what sustains you personally? So do you have some daily practices or communities you're a part of that help you stay grounded as a leader?
Well, I would say my husband, my family, my good friends that aren't around me here in Pittsburgh, but with whom I'm in close touch, they keep me grounded. They ensure I don't take myself too seriously. And they help me provide me with opportunities for laughter, for just being in touch with who I am as not president.
Okay.
And so long-term friends who knew me way back when. And my sisters, my mother, still alive, thankfully. I talk to her every night. And I focus on daily gratitude, and I don't take anything for granted. I listen to music a lot, especially in the morning. I spend an hour and a half listening to music as I get ready. I'm a dancer, so I make sure that I dance regularly.
What kind of dance are you partial to?
Well, I was a ballet dancer, but I also did tap and jazz. Never did hip hop. Didn't exist when I was doing that. But just moving, getting out of your head. I spend a lot of time in my head. Getting out of it into your body is important to me to do, and to connect with who I was, right? Before I became an academic, and all those different things that make me who I am as a human being, my experiences, the different parts of my identities. I try to keep in touch with that through these networks of family and old friends. And I really take joy, and the people that I work with, really, no matter what awful thing we're dealing with, I enjoy coming into work. And that is so important since you're spending so much time at work. And I keep my focus on why we're all doing this. It's because of our students and helping them, giving them what they need to go forth and live in this, be adults in this unimaginably complex time we live in.
Yeah.
That makes everything worthwhile.
Oh, that's terrific. So I've got two final questions. Our time is almost up here. I did want to ask you about the vision that you've articulated for preparing students for the fourth industrial revolution. So can you say more about that, particularly in terms of innovation and technological fluency like AI that's being talked about and is on the news almost every day? How does all of that fit in terms of your vision for La Roche?
Well, I think it's a sine qua non. there's no other option but to do that if we're going to prepare our students for lives of purpose, for a career where they're going to have all these different types of jobs, 15 jobs in 5 different sectors. The World Economic Forum predicts it's irresponsible and I think unethical not to make sure students are prepared for that enough to get an entry-level job. And so I know there's lots of ethical problems with AI in terms of bias, in terms of the environment, but we need to make sure that we make them aware of those problems, the ethical use of AI and all the environmental impact, but also make sure they have the skills they need to get jobs. So I don't think you can not engage.
Are you doing anything specific in terms of AI literacy in the curriculum?
Oh, yes. In fact, our Vice President of Academic Affairs, Gregor Tuswaldner, testified in front of our state legislators about what we're doing. We've embedded it in our curriculum. In our digital literacy class, all students earn a certificate, AI literacy certificate, which includes the ethical use of AI, and it's embedded in every capstone major course. There's an assignment in which they have to use AI. So we want them to be able to demonstrate they've got skills.
Yeah, that's terrific. And I think I did see something on social media about his participation testifying. So that's an area where I think your institution is going to certainly play a lead role and help model the way for other colleges and universities. So here's my final question. It's kind of a signature question we ask every guest on the show. So if you think ahead 10 years, and maybe you're no longer at La Roche, maybe you're enjoying the sunset, maybe somewhere.
Retired.
Retired, yes. You're looking back. What impact do you hope your leadership will have had for La Roche? And then how about for the broader higher education world?
Well, I hope that for La Roche, that it will show that I mobilized our amazing community to successfully navigate the unprecedented combination of challenges for higher education so that we have set La Roche up for long-term financial sustainability, which is so, so important. And that I helped raise La Roche's profile and also faculty and staff's pride. They're used to thinking themselves as this little unknown gem and not wanting to toot their own horn, but saying, no, what you do in delivering this transformational education that I hear about from students and faculty all the time, that's really important. This is your work. This is your impact. You should be very, very proud of that. So I want to ensure that that's what they first think of and not otherwise. I want there to be a legacy of strong, healthy, shared governance. And I want our mission to remain really strong, our commitment to global citizenship, global education, education for citizenship, ethics, service, working for justice and peace. I want our legacy and mission to continue to be extremely strong. And in terms of higher ed, hopefully it's as you say that some of the things we do can serve as models. It's easier, I think, in smaller institutions to do that kind of thing than for large state flagships where it's harder to move the ship. So it would be good to be innovative and have some of that be influential in higher ed.
Yeah. And I have no doubt that it will. So you are clearly the right person for the right time at La Roche. And it's been such a pleasure to have the conversation and to learn more about your journey and the work that you're doing there. So thank you, Christina, for spending this time with me.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, Melissa.